spine segmentation is one of those things that, depending on who you follow or where you lurk on the internet, it's either a waste of time or maybe totally impossible, or it's the most amazing thing that's ever been used for spine training. Now, things on social media are constantly getting pushed into these extremes. You could think about this video as a practical application to spine segmentation. Now, if you've never even heard of it before, my goal is to, one, give you a good understanding of what spine segmentation actually means, maybe dispel some of the myths. But if you're somebody who's just trying to go deeper down that rabbit hole of spine training, or maybe you're a coach who trains other people's spines, this should give you some good tools that you can use as a diagnostic to really just make you make more informed training decisions. If you've never heard of spine segmentation before, this is what a segmented cat-cow is. I'm going to start with my spine in as much flexion as I can get into. Now I'm going to start at the bottom of my spine, and I'm going to slowly try to move through extension, starting at the bottom, working my way up. So I am just trying to incrementally extend slowly from the bottom up as I move through my thoracic spine. I'm trying to keep my cervical spine still. And when I get all the way through my thoracic spine, now I can start extending my neck. And I'm trying to work from the bottom of my neck up to the top. Now I'm in my end range of extension, and I'm just going to do the opposite going back down. I'm starting to try to flex my lowest lumbar vertebrae, and I'm just incrementally flexing, working my way back up. It's very deliberate, it's very slow. I'm really just trying to feel out as much contraction on either the front or the back of my spine, depending on which direction I'm moving. If you're trying to segment your spine for the first time, or having a client try to do it for their first time, I would encourage you to think about this as simply a barometer for how well that particular spine is able to distribute load across it. As I mentioned before, that small motion at each vertebrae, what that motion equates to is transmission of force across that joint. If you have somebody who has a very locked up lumbar spine, just meaning they have little control over it, there's much less motion relative to how much they have in their thoracic and cervical spine. If we go and have them do a global spine movement like a Jefferson curl, which for the record is a fantastic exercise and I highly encourage you to do them, but if we have that particular client start loading Jefferson curls, where they're going to load their spine the most is in the vertebrae that move the most. So we're going to get a lot more load through the thoracic spine and much less through the lumbar spine. And really, that lumbar spine is a bigger priority because it has less ability to transmit force across it. So often, when we're looking at these spines, there's advice out there that just says, load those global movements and everything gets better. That's making a big assumption about how much motion and control we have over those vertebrae. So when you're thinking about segmentation, the better you get at segmentation, the better display you are making that your spine is going to do better with global loading across it. It's going to respond better to that global loading. When it comes to making decisions based on what you find in that segmentation, the goal with those findings is that is helping you decide where you should apply load directly. Now, if you follow me on social media, I'm a huge fan of functional range conditioning, and I utilize those principles I have for the last 10 years in all of my training for myself and other clients. I'm a huge believer in direct loading. So if I have a client who has no control over their lumbar spine, when I have them do a couple reps of a segmented cat-cow, I go, cool, let's start loading your lumbar spine directly. And we can start with isometrics. That is a super simple way to load somebody's lumbar spine at a level that they can tolerate, and it gives them time to actually feel which part of their spine they're trying to load. For example, you could do a couple sets of isometrics progressing to an appropriate intensity. You could have them go back and do segmented cat-cow again. I guarantee you, if you funnel that load into that lumbar spine for a couple good sets, when they go back and segment their spine, they will have a better connection and a tiny bit more movement in their lumbar spine. And often for those people, when they're doing it, what they feel is a really dramatic improvement of, wow, I can actually feel my lumbar spine moving, because a lot of the time people who haven't tried to do this, they just won't have a lot of sensation in those different parts. They might get to a spot where they're like, I don't have this feeling here, it's kind of dead. Direct loading is the easiest way to build those connections so they can actually feel their spine. Here's some more nuanced details on spine segmentation. Now, earlier I was saying the intention of this is not to give you that Jedi mind trick level of spine control where you're going to move one vertebrae without moving the others. However, There's external feedback that you can use, which will give you doing this a lot of feeling, depending on where you're trying to do this on your spine. Sometimes you need to have somebody else's fingers on your spine because we just don't have enough range of motion in our shoulders to touch our spine everywhere. But if I had a client who came in complaining about low back pain when they do deadlifts, bend over to tie their shoes, whatever, I have them do a spine segmentation and I can just see that their low back doesn't move well. I'm going to have them load that spine and try to get them to feel that part of their lumbar spine, those lumbar erectors working in a lengthened position, for example. Then I'm going to have them do segmentation again, and I'm going to have them put their fingers on their back like this. Now, if I put my index finger right at the top of my pelvis, so basically I'm trying to cross L5S1, try to get my middle finger a little bit above that, my ring finger above that, and my pinky finger above that. I'm spanning a few of those vertebrae. Now, this is a very small amount of movement, so it's not going to look like much on camera, but what I'm going to try to feel here is extension at L5S1. That just means I'm trying to get motion to happen under my index finger. Now, I'm moving my index finger, and I don't feel any movement happening at my middle finger or the fingers above that. So it's this tiny couple millimeters of movement. Now I'm going to try to work up to my middle finger, and now my ring finger, now my index finger. Now those lower vertebrae are in as much extension as I have. I can start at my pinky finger and I can try to push my spine into my pinky finger. I can feel that moving under my pinky finger. Now my ring finger, middle finger, index finger. My whole entire spine is not staying entirely still, but even for somebody who's built up a bunch of muscle from doing hypertrophy training on their back, if you press your fingers into the center of their spine, you will feel that little bit of motion at a very incremental level. And for somebody even who's never even heard of spine segmentation, when I have people with low back pain who come in and we work on this, they can feel that motion. They can feel that when they try to extend their spine, all 4 of their fingers are moving at once. That is a very clear indication for them that that lower part of their spine does not distribute load as well as it could with a little more direct training. So I highly encourage you to try that at least on your lumbar spine. But if you're training other people, you can put your fingers higher up on the spine and just find commonly, like that transition between your lumbar and your thoracic spine. A lot of the time that TL junction is very locked up. You might find that if somebody's going into extension, there's just a whole big chunk that moves together. You can feel that motion. It's not like you're down there touching their actual vertebrae, but you can feel motion under your fingers. And anybody who says that you can't do that, I guarantee you has not actually spent any time trying to do that. There's other options for external feedback too. I'm a huge fan of this thing. This is called a Seg-B. It's from Backsync. I've been using this for a few years. I use it a lot with clients because it just is another really very visual and auditory way that you can get people to understand how their spine is moving. And basically you just lay on it and there's each key moves, which makes it really easy to see and feel which part of your back is moving. So just for a quick example here, if I lay down and I try to get all of these lower keys pushed down, I can try to segmentally flex my lumbar spine. And what I'm going to try to do is just basically go posterior tilt first and get that bottom key to pop up and then work my way up my spine. I can work my way back down, again, trying to flex each one of those vertebrae and push the keys down as segmentally as possible. Somebody with a really locked up spine who's never done this before often will just move a couple keys at once. So when they go to flex their lumbar spine, you'll see a whole bunch of keys lift up, or maybe you'll see that second key lift up because they don't have enough flexion at that lower vertebrae. Hopefully that gives you a better idea of what spine segmentation is and how you can apply it to your own training or with clients. And my parting words on this would be, it takes very little time to get better at this skill. You have somebody do a couple reps of spine segmentation before and after some direct isometric loading. That's probably going to take you no more than 2 or 3 minutes, and it is going to give them a ton of information about their own spine, and it's just going to give you one more tool to use for improving somebody's spine health.